Okay, so welcome back to the fourth episode of our Wednesday weekly series on self-care. And I'm Lori White with the Greater Providence Chamber. And we are joined, as always, by Katie McDonald. And Katie is the founder of Be Nourished. And Katie is a self-help consultant, former senior executive in the business world, who, quite frankly, got sick. This kind of work made her physically ill, or as she says, she made herself physically ill. But that's kind of what gave rise to the notion of, during these very, very stressful times, taking care of ourselves is something that we might put on the back burner, and we don't want to do that. So that's what gave rise to this idea of, we've been there, we felt it, we've taken steps, or at least Katie, very authoritatively has taken steps to really put herself in a much better place. And those are the types of topics that we're going to be talking about on a weekly basis. So we started our first session 4 weeks ago. We just kind of painted the landscape of, what is self-care and why should we go down that path, and what happens if we don't take care of ourselves. So that was our first topic. And then we went into the topic of food as a business issue. So here we are, we're business professionals, and we're talking about self-care from the business perspective. Because if we can't think clearly, if we don't have mental acuity, we're not going to be able to have the energy, either physically or mentally, to be able to keep our businesses in motion and make the decisions that we really need to make for the best interests of ourselves and for our families and for our employees and our business. So that was session 2. And last week, we delved into the very important subject of sleep, making sure that, in fact, we are getting the sleep that we need. A lot of us might think that, heck, I've been in bed. I was in bed for 8 hours. Yeah, I slept, but did we really sleep? And did we get the type of restorative sleep that we need in order to really function at peak efficiency? So those are that's the pathway that we've been on so far. And when we were talking about sleep, we instinctively were talking about, what is that evening routine that we could adopt that would make sleep so much easier to come by. Which leads us to today's session. And today's session is about, you guessed it, the morning routine. What do we do in the morning to put ourselves in the best possible position that we can in order to have a great day? In order to have a day where we're taking care of ourselves, where we've set up the appropriate boundaries, we know not to bite off more than we can chew, how to set small micro goals, and really, pace ourselves during the course of the day. Because even though we're not leaving our houses, I don't know about all of you, but I know at the end of the day, it's a different kind of fatigue than you get when you're actually in the office. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And if you have questions, I really encourage you to put them in the chat box, or we can address them live. We can bring you into the conversation, and you can chat with both me and Katie, and we'll kind of bat it around, and that's what makes for a good discussion. So we want to keep it kind of random, if you know what I mean, not too pre-planned and free-flowing, and want to get some good conversation going. So to start out, I just wanted to, I thought it'd be useful for all of us to, before we, talk about the morning routine per se, but to hear a little bit from Katie about what her life was like back when, she really felt that things were falling apart, and, what forces led to that, and how it is that she got to where she is today. So good afternoon, Katie. So tell us a little bit about your journey, because I know that we can all learn from you.
Well, I only want to share it to the degree that it might actually inform yours. So I want to encourage you to hear any aspect that might resonate with you to say, oh, that is me, or it could be me. I was the anti-example, the what not to do, but I was addicted to busyness. I loved being productive. I still do. I loved a challenge, and I didn't know how to rest. I was terrified of rest. That was my worst fear. So, and I know I'm not alone in that. And that's one of the things that's coming up for people during this quarantine. It's like busyness is what we're out trying to outpace this, trying to outrun the quiet. And that was my worst fear, was quiet. Because
what were you doing for your executive position?
Yeah, so I worked for Time Magazine, and I represented 45 national titles. I sold advertising in Business Week, Fortune, Forbes, Elle Decor, People, Sports Illustrated, and I traveled all over and sold advertising packages. And the thing like sales and like anything is there was no end. Anytime, I was never done. And I actually found myself saying that recently, like, I'm never done. There's never like, there's always one more call you can make, one more person you could try to help, one more content that you could do. And there was just no turning off. And now the world has forced us to turn off, and it's a perfect opportunity to be reflective and to say, hey, I'm going to start renegotiating my relationship with myself. I'm going to shine a flashlight in all the dark corners of my life and the light corners and say, like, hey, what can I clean out? What can I look at again and change? Because we really are forced to take this deep breath. And I had to do it. I had ulcerative colitis, pneumonia, shingles, asthma, allergies, depression, anxiety, all like on a platter all at once. And clearly my body and spirit and mind had just broken. And it was the only thing that got me to stop long enough to realize, wow, what I'm doing isn't sustainable. I can't keep doing this. Mm-hmm. And so I always studied routines. I've always been a structured person, but I was structuring like more tasks getting done. So whenever I developed a morning routine, the idea was so that I could get everything else done. It wasn't so that I could take care of myself. And so what we're talking about today is using that time, that sacred time, to leverage it so that we can get done the things we need to get done to take care of ourselves. The maintenance stuff. That's what I love about a morning routine is let's bang it out in the morning because the likelihood that it's actually going to happen as the day goes on decreases dramatically when we're in service to our work and we're in service to our families.
So I love that. It's really not meant to be a situation where you're developing a morning routine so that you can get more done. It's really, repositioning why we're doing a morning routine, not for productivity, but actually for self-care.
Well, which leads to productivity, right? When we take care of ourselves, we're laying the groundwork. It's compost, right? In the garden of productivity, in the garden of legacy, in the garden of impact. This is compost. We have to, you said it in the beginning, in the opening, like we have to ready ourselves. What our morning routine defines who we are, defines the rest of the day. I mean, it's the AM, which is am, right? So I like to think of the morning, AM is I am. Let your morning define who you are. And if you don't like who you are right now, in aspects of yourself, taken outside of this crisis, then look at your morning routine and say, how might I be a different version of myself right now? Not a perfect version, just pivoting, not perfecting. Mm-hmm. How might I refine this so that I can make sure I show up for myself the way I show up for everybody else?
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned you had pneumonia, shingles, depression, anxiety, mm-hmm. ulcerative colitis, to name just a few. Yes. How long did it take for you to extinguish all those issues, all those problems once you began?
6 months.
6 months. So did you quit? Yeah. Did you actually quit your job?
I was done. So I was working in my job, got sick, decided to quit. And right before I quit, I conceived my son. So I kept with that time frame, had my son, and then I took the same intensity that I put in my career. I was that obnoxious Uber mom that everybody hated, the one that made everybody else look bad, that baked all the cookie, was, doing everything, over functioning for everybody else. It was just ego driven, desperate, left without my career. I was like, well, who am I? Well, I'm just going to be super mom. So obnoxious. I'm sorry to anybody during that time period of my life, how obnoxious I was, but like I had to grow up. And so I got sick again. And like it all came out at higher volume, magnified, just to humble me again.
Yeah.
And then it was like, I think I'd love to say that I reached the epiphany that I was going to do differently on my own, but it was really like, oh my gosh, I can't leave my son. Like they were going to remove my colon. I was going to have long extended periods in the hospital. I'm like, oh God, yeah, I can't do that to my son. I somehow could do it to myself in pursuit of getting things done, of being important and, successful and blah, successful. When the lining of your colon is falling out, I wouldn't call that super successful, but that's what I was doing. So it really took it took my son coming into the picture, and I was like, wow, I've got to do better for him. And then with time, I was like, wow, I've got to do better for me, right?
Yeah, that's really interesting. So it took you 6 months, and that's how you began to get interested in this work of setting up a morning routine and other self-care practices that really accelerated your recovery, which is basically why we're sharing this information with others today.
Well, I would even tweak that a little bit, Laura. I was interested in it for decades. I studied, every book was on nutrition. Every book was on, in fact, I have my computer propped up in nutrition books. Like everything I read was about productivity, about mindfulness, like all alternative well-being, everything. I studied it for 3 decades, but I didn't implement it.
Yeah.
Right? You can have all the knowledge in the world. And that's why we ask you every time during these sessions to say, okay, guys, identify one thing you're actually going to implement, because I did the path of feeding my head, but not changing my life.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't until in that 6 months, I had to implement everything I had studied, and I had to add an element of intensity and urgency. I had to, take the volume way up because I was literally fighting for my life at that point. And so I think it's really important to remember that nothing changed until I stopped, until I slowed down. And the morning routine is a way for us to calibrate, recalibrate, and pace ourselves in a way that reflects like, who do I want to be? Well, my morning routine is going to define that.
Yep. That's really interesting. The idea that that we have to pace ourselves in order to really be able to internalize it. And sometimes we spend so much time in our head, perfecting information, but we forget that we actually have to execute.
Yeah, put it into practice. Right.
Okay, so let's kind of unpack that whole notion of a morning routine, Katie. So picking up where we left off last week, where we talked about the evening routine and how to get a good night's sleep. Mm-hmm. So presuming we've done all that, we've readied ourselves, we've been very restful, we've set our sleep app, we've determined what time we're going to get up, whatever time that may be in advance. What next?
Yeah, so I mean, really, you asked how to get started on a morning routine, right? Like, where do we even start? And I think the first thing we need to remember is we're in like blank storm protocol right now. Like what we're doing right now is not our normal stuff, right? Like we're in crisis and we need to adapt. So I think it's important that we position it as in crisis right now. How are we going to do this? At the same time, when you're not in crisis, it's when you want to lean, like you craft this morning routine and then you implement it more than ever during a crisis, but you're going to have to tweak a little bit. And so I want to make sure we remember we have to be flexible right now. We've got kids who are home when they shouldn't be home. We've got spouses that are home when they shouldn't be home. Like everything's topsy-turvy. So we need to root and ground ourselves in these morning routines. If you don't think you have a morning routine, I'm going to challenge you because I believe you do. We all do. It may not be intentional, and that's what this session is about, an opportunity to get intentional, to liberate ourselves by being deliberate. So the first thing is to review your current routine. What is it even? What are you actually doing right now for you and what isn't? So we want to say what's working with my morning routine, like what time I wake up, what's not working, and what do you wish you had time for? So many people have said to me, oh, if I could only play guitar. Like, again, the morning is that time to bang out the stuff because the rest of the day might be a holy nightmare. It just might. So like, we got to make that deposit first thing. So once you discover like, okay, what's working in my current routine is I'm having breakfast and I have a smoothie and I really like that. What's not working is that I keep pushing snooze on the alarm, right? That's not working. And what do you wish you had time for? So we look at that and we say, okay, in an ideal scenario, these are the things I would get done in the morning. And those components that I love to see are breakfast, planning time, planning the day, exercise at some point, the grooming, obviously, some meditation, prayer. Like these are some of the ideal components. Taking supplements, if you take supplements, a lot of people struggle about doing that. Anything where there's resistance is willpower is at your zenith in the morning. So let's leverage that, because by 3-4 o'clock, forget it. You're drained. You've been a good girl or boy all day. You've been tending to everybody else. Like, it feels like a burden instead of this privilege. So I really walk my clients through, like, what is it we want to do? And then we assign how much time does it take to do it? Okay, grooming, 10 minutes or, 30 minits. Like, who are you? I don't take long with my hair, obviously, but somebody that does, they're going to need more time around that. If breakfast, if you want a more abundant breakfast, you're going to have to plan, or you make a smoothie before. So you got to figure out how much time, and then you say, well, therefore, I'm on duty with my family, for instance, at 7 o'clock. And I need an hour and a half for my routine. That means I'm getting up at 6:30. Right? We've got to get realistic about what is it that we can accomplish when we're on duty, when we choose to be on duty, or when we are forced to be on duty. And then we've got to get up at a time that allows for that. So I really encourage you to establish a morning routine and implement it robotically, like a soldier, like ding, ding, like that alarm goes off every day. So you have to make a choice. If your alarm goes off in the morning, I want you to see it as a contract. It's not a suggestion. It's not a hint. It's not a whisper. It is the first promise that you've made to yourself, and you're going to keep it or you're not. And every morning when we hit that snooze button, we're saying, world, I'm not ready for you, right? Which is not the message we want to communicate to ourselves. And, oh, I was only kidding when I made that contract in the fantasy of last night that I was actually going to get up at a certain time. Like, let's keep our word to ourselves. That's the first step. And then robotically move through it. Give yourself a 2-week experiment of like, I'm going to just do this Monday through Friday, and I'm going to see what works and what doesn't work. And that's what I do with my clients. We craft it out. We bang it out. I hate this, love this, want more of this. Like, all of a sudden we're playing all around, and then it's ta-da. Like, we hear angels. It's like, this is it. And that's like, it takes time, but it saves so much time. It helps us have the meaning, that dash of the before date and the end date that's on our tombstone. It's like, it brings it meaning because we have done the work to be intentionally present for our own lives.
Well, what I do is a little bit unorthodox and no doubt very unhealthy, but I say to myself, okay, what do I have to do? And then I back time. What is the longest possible minute I can stay in bed before I have to get up? And then I get up and I make a mad dash to, get everything else in before I have to do my first real thing. So,
Well, if it works for you, Lori,
getting up.
Well, if it works for you, right? I mean, that may, yeah. I really think rushing is a complete obstacle to how we want to lead our lives. I don't think rushing is ever helpful. Yeah. So I think it's, it creates more anxiety at a time that we're already really anxious. So I think it's important to not rush and to be able to say, okay, I really think, one of the guidelines for a good morning routine means not checking in with technology, like literally saying,
that's what I was going to go next. So how do you prevent work from encroaching on your morning routine? So of course, the first thing I do is I pick up the phone and I say, what happened in the last 6, 7, 8 hours?
So,
do I have any
when you're doing that, Lori, what you're doing is checking in with the outside world before you even checked in with yourself. And the beauty of a self-care routine and a morning routine is that we're getting to know ourselves. We're checking in with ourselves like, hey, Lori, how you doing, girlfriend? Like, what do you need today? What's going on? Like, we need to reflect. We need to review, we need to be intentional, and so it's real, and we need to be present for our own lives. So I would really encourage you to practice. One of the ways is to not use your phone as an alarm, because it's just too tempting. We've got to set ourselves up for success. So get that phone away from you. And I also, my screen.
Not even just a little teeny peek?
Well, no, I mean, you're the expert on you, so you've got to decide. But like, my screen is this.
How can you?
So I make my first screen is lavender. So even if I do pick it up, it's like, and then my next ones are my most urgent ones. And then my next ones are that don't go there. Facebook, LinkedIn, they're all in there.
I love
So
that idea. I
yeah,
love
so that's
thinking of
one of the
organizing your
ways.
home screen by like toxicity levels, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, we have to fortify ourselves now more than ever.
Yeah.
We've got to be very careful about our mindsets. I'm noticing the people that started out really strong, they're like, yeah, I love this time off. This is great. All of a sudden, it's like the boundaries are getting like wet cardboard, getting a little loose, getting a little sloppy. It's like, okay, we got to refortify ourselves. So the morning routine, rock solid. It's like no matter what, set yourself up to feel successful, because right now we don't feel like we have any sense of control. We don't feel like we have any sense of agency. And a morning routine says, oh, you do. It's scaffolding, it's structure without suffocation. And every person's need for structure is unique. It's our job to figure out what that is.
Yeah.
But if our temptation is to check in with the world, it's actually a proven a strategy for being distracted. It actually makes you less effective and less impactful. So I would really encourage you to reconsider that. Experiment, say for the next 2 weeks, I'm not going to interact with any tech until, until I've completed my morning routine.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds you have some control. It's like, otherwise we're just, oh, I hate the Pavlovian, like, I don't want a bell to ring and I'm jumping. I am offended and I'm tempted, and I set myself up so that I don't go there.
All right, well, a couple of things. First off, I want to encourage folks to put some questions in the chat box, or to raise your hand if you want to jump in. But I do want Katie to talk about what the components of a successful morning routine would be. But before we do that, I want to break for 72 seconds. Okay, everybody, I want you to hang with me for 72 seconds, because we have a promotional spot from one of our signature sponsors, who is graciously stepped forward to be an underwriter of the Chamber's virtual work during this very unusual time. So please spend 72 seconds listening to Tufts Health Plan, and the message is right on target.
Introducing a new way to think about healthcare. We call it simplicity. Because we believe, simply, that healthcare can work better and should work better. And that bridging those two ideas doesn't always require elaborate engineering. Sometimes it's just a matter of being there, when, where, and how you need us. Of working closely with doctors in ways that have made us one of the top-ranked health plans in the country for quality. Of using technology like telehealth and proactive texting to bring us together, spanning the distance between the lives we live and the health we seek. Of realizing, ultimately, that it's not about the bridges we build, it's about the people we connect and the extraordinary things we can accomplish together. We're with you.
So thank you very much to our friends at Tufts Health Plan for being so generous and underwriting the portion of the work that we're doing virtually here, and we really appreciate that. So anyway, back to the subject matter at hand. Katie, you've told us how to get started on a morning routine. So what I want to ask now, and again, I want the gallery to either chime in on the chat or raise your hand. What are some components of a good morning routine?
Well, I'll share mine. We did a version of this before, but I'll share mine just as an idea as to what you might have on there. Again, the general idea is to make sure we're doing the things that we have the most resistance to, because this is when our willpower is at its highest. We remember who we are. We remember that elevated version of ourselves. far more than we will by 3 p.m. So we want to do it then. And we also want to see it as an insurance policy. Just keep making deposits because all day long, there's lots of opportunities for withdrawals, but we need to make sure that this protected window is there. I get up at 5 a.m. This is what works for me. This is not for everybody. I get up at 5 a.m. because I don't want to talk to anybody. The minute I encounter someone in my family other than my dog, or I'm still doing this, but like I'm in service to them. It's how I'm wired. It's who I am. The minute I see them, I'm immediately thinking, what do they need? And I don't want to do that. So the only way to shut that out is to get up at 5. And so I do. I take care of my dog, but I stretch as soon as I get up. I do some light grooming and head downstairs, feed the dog, make my smoothie, have my supplements, make my cup of tea, and then I head directly into the meditation room. And I meditate for 20 minutes. Then I come out, then I sit with my planner, review my plan for the day, refine it, tweak it if I need to. And then I study for 30 minutes on something so that I can, just for personal well-being, but of course, everything I study, I bring directly to my clients too. So it's a twofer. And then I let the outside world in. I check Facebook and then I check LinkedIn, but I do it in a very measured way. I go on, I look at it, I line up both of them. So I go on, look at it, do what I need to do, switch into LinkedIn right away. Then I go into my budget. And I manage my professional budget and my family budget every day because I had amnesia around money. I was just disconnected and it was my way of doing it. And I would spend like a month, I mean, not a month, I'd spend like 3 days out of every quarter having to catch up for all the neglect. And I was like, nope, daily habit. And it's very short now because I'm on top of it. So every day balance my checkbooks. And then I go in and go into the social media content for my clients, review that, social media in general, and then connect with my clients, give them some content to review for the day. And then I shift into my exercise routine. So,
right. So there is some work though, then some work is encroaching into your morning. So it's not all just meditation.
Well, it's not encroaching. I let it, well, are you counting so I'm only counting the work part. Yeah. So it's from the Facebook part on. Yeah. That takes me about 15 to 20 minutes. And I really have to guard against it taking more. Mm-hmm. Worked backwards. So the first I see it at 9. So I know what I need to do in order to be ready for that person. So for that first person. So it's my way. And then transitioning to the workout is like, I do my workout, I call my mother, I get in the shower, and then I'm in the world. And so at every point along the way, they're touch points. Yes. So I guess they have touched other aspects of my life. I've checked in about the work part, but we've got to figure out what works for us. And there are times when my workout could be an hour, but like I only hold myself to 30 minutes. And so, we've got to pivot and we've got to figure out, and I have tweaked and refined this over decades, but particularly every year I renegotiate it. Say, there's some element that's not working?
Yeah. So Deb says she sets her alarm for 5:15 every morning and then does her walking group at 5:45. So that's an excellent morning routine. Perfect. So Jackie Noel, I see that you have a comment that you want to share with us.
I'm curious. So I stick to somewhat, I think, of a decent morning routine that includes a lot of those elements, probably not meditating. I probably have to work on technology, but some of the pieces are there. So I'm encouraged. But I'm curious if you haven't slept well, or if something's going on, or you're just feeling that you need that extra sleep, or you can't do all of that. Are you taking that time as well and not feeling guilty and beating yourself up for it?
Oh, that is like beating yourself up and berating yourself is the most exhausting, colossal waste of time. And I spent decades doing it. It was really a huge part of why I got sick, is the perfectionism and shaming and all that crap that I really would suggest you unload, or anybody unload. So here's the thing. I protect my sleep because my morning routine is my anchor. So I will make sure that I go to bed. I will do everything I can to make, my caffeine stops at noon. Like I take a bubble bath before bed. Like I have that nighttime routine because I'm protecting the morning routine. Mm-hmm. Do you see what I'm not that person that's going to go out partying all hours of the night because I don't want to compromise that. So when something means a lot to us, we're going to work around it, right? The other piece is, let's say you wake up and you haven't slept, then you've got to take a moment and say, you know what, what's the best option for me right now? There's procrastination and there's responding to a true human need for sleep. So I wouldn't, if I was continually having trouble sleeping, then I would get to that issue, and I wouldn't keep sacrificing the morning routine, because at some point you got to interrupt that cadence and reset. So a lot of my clients, when they'll say, well, well, I slept in because I got to bed late last night. I'm like, so for the next 2 weeks, I don't care what time you go to bed, you're getting up anyway. And all of a sudden, right, I'm like, I don't care if you ate, a row of Oreos, but like, you're getting up anyway. And what happens is then we start protecting it and we appreciate it, and we feel like such crap the night before. If we've made choices the night before that are going to influence the morning, we see how ineffective we are, how unproductive we are, how frustrated we are, how diminished we are. It's not worth it. It's simply not worth it. So with time, instead of it feeling like a straitjacket, it actually is this wonderful like scaffolding. It's like, I love that morning routine, and any kind of interruption to it. Like, I do it on vacation. I do a variation of it. I even bounce my checkbook there. Like, it sounds obsessional, but it isn't. It's a beautiful testimony to what truly matters to me. I think our morning routine is like the lingerie drawer, or the medicine cabinet. It should reveal who we are and what matters most to us. And most importantly, the common thread is connection with ourselves, because all day long we have amnesia. We forget who we are. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you. Great advice.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Jackie. So we have a question from both Lynette and Darlene, and their questions are similar. Do you have any advice for the night owl who is trying to become more of a morning person?
Yeah, I love that. Here's the thing. This is a perfect time. This chaos, like, you might as well mess everything up, right? We're already topsy-turvy, upside down. So let's just totally muck with ourselves and say, okay, like, a lot of times this idea of ourselves being night owls is like, it was in high school or college, and we haven't even rethought, like, is that still true or not? Is it still applicable to who we are right now? So I would challenge you to say, like, I don't know what stories you have about yourself, but you can rewrite them at any point. And you got to interrupt them at some point. So let's say you're the night owl and you're saying, I want to see what happens. I'm going to experiment. What happens when I wake up at 7 a.m.? Do I like it? It's funny, like, do I like this version of me better? Do I actually get done the things that I've been avoiding? Can I bang out that exercise that haunts me all day long that I'm actually going to blow off anyway? Or, like, do I like that version of me that actually does it? So I would encourage you to experiment. And what happens is, if you're telling yourself, again, that hard line, I'm getting up no matter what, you're going to naturally gravitate towards going to sleep earlier, because a workout, when you're exhausted, sucks. Like, ugh, it's brutal. It's like it's like walking through, water. And so we want to make things easier for ourselves. We want to set ourselves up for success. So we start gravitating towards the habits that will support us.
Mm-hmm. So Darlene says, I'm with you, Lynette. I'm finally getting into my day and it's almost 5 p.m. So
well, here's the thing. If it works for you, go for it. If you have energy, if you have mental clarity, if you have creativity, if you love your life, there's laughter, there's joy, there's time in nature, there's reflection, spiritual time, you're eating well, you're like, if you're rocking your life and that works for you, great. My guess is you're asking that question and you're even being on the seminar because you're thinking, maybe I want to do something different. And I would encourage you to explore it. We have to renegotiate our habits on a regular basis, at least annually, because otherwise we get in these ruts and we wonder why we feel stuck. It's like we're stuck because we're doing things that no longer serve us. We've outgrown them. And so we need to start bringing in some new habits and bring in some fresh air.
Anybody else want to jump in with a question? Lil, do you have a question? Yes, jump right in.
This is great. I'm really enjoying it. I hate exercising. I hate every second of it and avoid it at all cost. So what I'm hearing is I need to do it in the morning, because you're saying your willpower is strongest in the morning. You're not going to talk yourself out of it in the morning, right?
Yeah, I mean, the beauty of a morning routine is you don't debate it. Like you decide and then you do. If you start negotiating, and I've talked about this before, like if I woke up and said, do I feel like meditating? It would be like, hell no, I don't feel like meditating. Do I feel like, we can't let our feelings run the show or we're screwed. Like we're not going to be the more evolved version of ourselves. We're going to be the toddler version of ourselves that have tantrums and don't do what we want to do. So I say this lovingly. If you don't like exercise, get over it. You're going to have to. You have a responsibility. You have a body. You have to move it. What form that takes, that's up to you. That's what you get to explore. I would encourage you to try everything. I would encourage you to do things that you love. This isn't about punishing yourself, but it is about being responsible. You have a body, you have a responsibility to move it so that you can be resilient to all sorts of disease and you can live a long, beautiful life and you can serve your community, your business community, your personal community with integrity and well-being. So you got to get over that. And you can say, I'm resistant. I get it. Wham, wham, wham. Just like a toddler. Can I have a cookie? Can I have a cookie? No, 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 no. Like you could talk all day long, but if you start listening to that voice, then you're not in control. You've handed the keys to the car of your life to a toddler and said, go for a ride. And you're strapped in the back seat. You know, so we got to like turn this around. We got to take the adult, mature responsibility for our lives and say, I know. And I even talk to myself, I know, honey, you don't want to do it, but I didn't ask you. You're doing it anyway. So we take this routine with authority and respect. Our higher self came up with it. So we need to do that in service to them. And then we see what happens. But don't consult yourself. Forget it. Don't ask yourself if you feel like doing it. Do it for 2 weeks and then say what works, what doesn't work, and then tweak and refine.
The internal battle in your head is worse than the battle itself.
That's the point. This is deliberate. It liberates you. When you have a plan, you're free. I don't question it. I don't want to go there because I won't make good choices in the moment. I'm going to make a choice based on my mood, and my mood has no say in whether I work out or not. My mood has no say in whether I'm going to have a healthy breakfast or not. It doesn't, it's inappropriate to consult that for the big decisions of my life and the little decisions.
Who's next with a question or a comment? Anybody take issue with this? Anybody out there say, nah,
bring it on.
This is foolishness. Okay, so one more question and then we'll wrap up so folks can get back to their routines, their afternoon routines. Let me just ask you this very quickly. Is it possible, or how do you protect yourself now that you are, you talked about the year 2004 and, the sickness that you brought upon yourself and what you did, all the steps that you've taken to feel a lot better, to recover from ulcerative colitis, depression, anxiety, shingles, pneumonia, and the like. What do you do? What are you doing? Or how do you protect yourself from getting back there again?
Oh, I mean, the biggest thing that I do, these routines and structures.
You're running a business, right? We're doing all this stuff. You're talking to me. I mean, this is work.
Yeah. My default is to go right back where I was. And I have checkpoints throughout the day. My morning routine, my nighttime routine are my bookends. It means I'm not going to stray. I plan my day, and at the end of the day, I say, how'd you do? I look for opportunities for growth, and I can take, if I have gone wayward, meaning I've taken on too much, I don't chastise myself. I don't beat myself. It's like, oops, I did it again. Oops, I did it again, right? I forgive myself, I move on, and I know our job is to know what our defaults are, right? We got to know what our triggers are. We got to know when we're going to go rogue, and we got to set ourselves up, not in a battle, but in this deep respect for who we are and a deeper commitment for wanting to be more evolved, not perfect, but more evolved. My job is to be a better version of myself than the day before. I used to compare myself to everybody else and feel like a complete and utter loser. And I used to compare myself to every standard that was not humane. Now my comparison is, how'd you do yesterday? I just want to be just a little bit better. Mm-hmm. In whatever form that takes. So I have these safeguards in place because left unchecked, I'll go right back there. I really will.
Yeah.
Crazy as it is, I will go right back there. The addiction to busyness is really, when your ego is so wrapped up, you believe that you are defined by what you do. You never learn how to be.
Yeah.
And these routines make sure that I know how to be, that I'm a human being, not a human doing.
Mhm.
And that's how I protect myself.
Yeah. Well, just one last point. I think during these times, a lot of people, are relishing the opportunity to stay busy and to throw themselves into something so that they're not thinking about all the COVID stuff that's out there and whatever. Like, they're appreciating that they have the ability to get lost even just a little bit and forget about it for a few minutes. But I think what you're saying is that, if taken to its extreme, then it's going to come back and bite at you.
Well, and we do want, this is an opportunity to self-reflect. I'm not saying contemplate your belly button all day long, like what a colossal waste of time, but I am saying it is an opportunity to be self-reflective. It is an opportunity to feel what we're feeling. What a missed chance if all we do is rush ourselves through it. And I'm going there. Like I gotta rein myself in because I am going there. So I've actually added an afternoon meditation because I gotta check in with myself. I don't want to wallow. I want to be present. I want to quiet myself because that's what this is all about, is harnessing the quiet.
Yeah. So we have to get used to the idea that when we're taking care of ourselves, that it feels productive the same way that checking something off your business list, and, you say, okay, I did that, done, done, done. That rush of adrenaline or dopamine,
Yes.
that when we, it's like, okay, finish that. But we have to have that same sort of, that same sense of dopamine rush when we do these things for ourselves as well. So I think
Well,
that's
the morning routine, it's a great point. The morning routine, it makes us successful. It's like, no matter what happens the rest of the day, look what I did. I exercised, I meditated, I did all the things that, I would left unchecked, would avoid, but most people only talk about doing. I banged it out before the day has even started. So like, woohoo, right? We need to celebrate ourselves and we need to set ourselves up to feel good.
okay. Now, speaking of that, Jackie has suggested that our next session, next Wednesday at 4, that we actually have a session on meditation. She says that would be great. And Deb has chimed in and said, I love that idea, Jackie. So what do you think, Katie?
Yeah, I'm in. We were going to do boundaries. We were going to do boundaries next week, but if you want to shuffle it and make it meditation, I'm cool with that too.
Yeah, let's take up Jackie's suggestion and kind of go there and see what that's all about. And I know one of the things about meditation is how to keep coming back to the breath and letting everything else kind of go. And that's the big tricky thing. Like when you've got a whole slew of responsibilities that are waiting for you on the other side of your meditation practice, how to really stay in the moment and all that. So I think that
it's a great idea.
We will look forward to you sharing your practices and understanding of what meditation can do for us, for our self-care. And so I want to thank you, and I want to thank everybody who has joined us today for the conversation, and always a pleasure to see your smiling faces out there. And we will be back next Wednesday at 4 o'clock. And again, if you want to send this webcast to any other folks that might need to look at it or might enjoy seeing some of the conversation, then we will be sending it to you right after this so you can link to it. So for now, have a great day, everybody. And thank you to our friends at Tufts Health Plan. And we will see you next week at 4 o'clock.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.